Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where I'm excited to bring you this season 2 wrap up and sign off before we take a quick break in between season 2 and next year's upcoming season 3. So if you have made it this far listening to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, I want to thank you so much for being here, for tuning in, for sharing your favorite episodes with your friends. I see people on Facebook in our different running Facebook groups and things like that sharing the podcast, and it's always so wonderful to see that and receive those shout outs. When I started this podcast, my goal was really to just have a place that I could share the advice and information and things that I felt like so many runners were missing. And more specifically, things that are really hard, I feel, to capture and adequately discuss on our other social media platforms. Instagram is fantastic for the most part. I love making content for Instagram. I love sharing content on Instagram, making posts and being a resource and a place where people can go to get good information. But when you're, having to break down a topic into just a little snapshot or like a single point or a 7-second reel that has to have a hook and be funny and, all of those things, kind of straddling that line between like informative and entertainment and, keeping it really short and snappy and attention grabbing. Sometimes a little bit of the depth and a little bit of the nuance is often missing from these conversations, right? And so this was something that I thought, by bringing this podcast out here and by putting a podcast out into the world, I have an opportunity to create my own platform where I can really, do a deep dive on these things and I can really completely discuss the nuance and the complexity and the ins and outs of all of these different topics and things like that affect runners, because so often a big part of misinformation isn't necessarily that the information we're seeing or getting or hearing is like completely wrong, like, we need to do a total 180 on this. Like it's 100% bad. Usually there's just more to the story. There's usually just like something else, something deeper, something contextually or specific to the person, or there's other factors we need to consider. And to have something like this podcast platform has been so amazing to be able to break these things down and to allow you to really get the full story on these topics. And then of course, we can pull that out and we can make a little 7-second reel or something quick to put it on the other social media platforms. But to have this place where you can go in and really know that you're getting the full story, we're laying it all out, all the cards on the table. That was really my motivation behind starting the podcast. And, now wrapping up season 2, it's been so amazing. All of the stuff that we've been able to cover, all of the different information that I've been able to bring to you. I also wanted to use this platform to be able to highlight the stories of runners, the people that both in my one-to-one coaching program and my online group program, the Fuel Train Recover Club. And I wanted to do that because, it's one thing for me to sit here and talk about a fueling strategy and how important it is, and scientifically speaking, what a difference it can make when you have a fueling strategy and how much better you'll feel and faster you'll run, and, how harmful low energy availability can be, and all of these different things. It's one thing for me to sit here and tell you this information as the person who's sort of dishing it out and trying to I guess convince you that what you need is to really look at your nutrition or look at your approach to training and recovery in order to become a better runner. But it's a totally different thing if you're hearing it firsthand from the people who have gone through it. and the people who have started maybe where you're struggling and have, been where you are, have had the same challenges, the same barriers, the same questions and the same fears and everything like that. And then you can hear their transformation and their story about what happens when they actually get the tools and the things they need in order to perform better, feel better, get stronger, like all of that stuff. So for you to hear it from the people who are actually doing it, I just think it's so much more powerful than me just, saying over and over and over again like a broken record that you need to eat more carbs. So yeah, so I know that there are, so many great running podcasts out there. You've got a lot of options for what to listen to. I mean, in every topic, in every category, there's just tons of great stuff out there in the podcast world. So if, this is the first episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast that you happen to be listening to, I want to say hello and welcome. You've got 2 seasons worth of stuff to go back to and check out. If you've been a long time listener, you've been here, maybe since the beginning of season 2, maybe since the beginning of season 1, maybe you've been here since we launched January of 2023. Then, I just want to say how much I appreciate that you've chosen my podcast and, chosen me to be a person that you want to listen to and taking the time to hear what I've got to say. We have covered so many great topics in season 2 of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. And I think we covered, so many great topics in season 1. I don't know which season I think is better. I don't know how we're going to top it for season 3, but I do already have some ideas in the works. I've of course always been thinking, if you work in this field, if you do this kind of thing, then you know that random ideas for podcast episode topics will pop into your head any hour of any day. So I've already got some ideas of some things I definitely want to make sure we dive into in season 3. And I'd love to hear your ideas too. If you have a question or a topic that you would like to hear me discuss on the show, then I would love to hear about it because, hearing what questions are on your mind, what topics you want me to discuss, things that you want to hear more about, then you can actually reach out to me. You can send an email to info@stephanienatchek.com. Or, of course, you can connect with me over on Instagram. You can find me at Steph the Runner's Dietitian. And you can just send me a DM and let me know that you've got an idea for a podcast episode. My DMs are always open and I'd love to chat with you. So I said that this was going to be our end of season wrap up. And of course, I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't do a little bit of a personal wrap up and, share kind of how the past year went for me and tell you a little bit about what I want to achieve next year. We always say that you got to tell people about your goals. So, here I am to the audience of thousands that listen to this podcast, publicly sharing what I hope to accomplish in 2025. So, for those of you who may not know, I have a set of little twin boys, and they turn 1 in November. So, I am currently recording this a few days before their first birthday, but you're going to hear this episode after their first birthday when it comes out in mid-December. So, we basically went a calendar year of, now being parents and juggling 2 little babies. And honestly, getting back into a consistent running routine for me was really challenging, more challenging than I expected physically. And then, of course, the ups and downs with sleep, and you go through those sleep regressions. You have kind of a string of bad nights and stuff like that. Getting up at 5 a.m. to get a workout in after you've been up for a few hours throughout the night is not the easiest or most fun thing. And when you have a baby, you're technically cleared for exercise for the most part at about 6 weeks postpartum. And so, a lot of people will start running again at 6 weeks. I ended up working with a physiotherapist for about 8 months after I had my twins. It was like August of this year when she finally discharged me from physio. And I didn't really expect this. Like, this was something that I just, really, really caught me off guard this year because I had such a great pregnancy. My pregnancy was honestly pretty easy. Like, I didn't have any major complaints. I was active right up until the day I delivered. I didn't run up until the day I delivered. I ran until I was about, I think, 30 or 32 weeks, and then I delivered at 36. So, I was active, I was walking, I was strength training, right up until the day that I went into labor. But, actually, like, physically delivering twins, apparently that's pretty hard to do. And so, I did have some lasting complications from that, even now, almost like a complete year later, has definitely continued to impact my running. So that's been really hard. I would say, I mean, mentally more than anything. Like, I've had some moments of being really, really down in the dumps, and just feeling very frustrated, and really, really upset with how that part is gone, how my recovery physically has gone in terms of returning to running. That, I think, has been easily the hardest part about this whole journey. And, I mean, I guess what I've learned from it is that you can't rush things, and you really can't compare your journey to anyone else's. They say that comparison is the thief of joy, and that is 100% true in so many areas of life. But what I found really hard was, to be in online communities, online spaces, social media, that sort of thing, and to see people who had much younger babies than mine running way more, racing, and, like, doing all these amazing things. And I just wasn't having that same experience. Like, I just was having, honestly, a terrible experience with getting back into running, and just feeling so frustrated and very hopeless at times about it. And I think that, these online communities, and online places to get support can be good, but you end up seeing a lot of those types of stories of, the people who are doing great and doing lots of really amazing things, and aspirational things. Sometimes it's better for us to just not see that. So, my advice, and just another lesson that I sort of took away from this was, like, if you're in a space, in a community, in a group that, if you really think about it, really reflect on it, ultimately is not supporting you, and you're feeling worse when you see what someone is sharing, when you're exposed to certain things, maybe the advice or information or whatever that you're getting is just, like, not helpful for you, just remove yourself, right? We can leave, we can mute, we can block, we don't need to do anything, expose ourselves to anything that ultimately isn't going to be beneficial for us. It doesn't help us to just be comparing ourselves all the time to what everybody else is doing. And yeah, I mean, sure, there are some, like, specific factors that made my return to running journey more difficult, more challenging than other people's, in the sense that, I had twins. I delivered two babies, not just one. I had two babies to juggle. So it made, certain aspects of a consistent exercise routine more challenging, like some little things like that. But there also are probably plenty of twin moms who have pretty much the exact same story that I do, but just their outcome and their situation ended up being a little bit different. So it's not always about just, telling ourselves, oh, well, that person's situation is different or whatever. Even if we have similar circumstances, that doesn't mean that our outcomes are still going to be the same. And so we really, even when comparing in that respect, sometimes it's better to just not see what other people are doing, and just sort of remove ourselves from those conversations. Interestingly, over the last 12 months, I did not get out for as much stroller running as I thought I would. I thought I was going to be like a big stroller runner, and sort of envisioned myself, every single day getting out for these stroller runs with my babies. And it's so funny. I honestly can probably count on one hand the number of times that I ran with them in the stroller. We did tons of walking. I mean, just about every single day over the summer, we got for a walk. But at the end of the day, like, I'm just a morning exercise person. So I found it easier to get out and get it done while they were still sleeping in the mornings. We would do a walk either in the afternoon or early evening, something like that. But I just found it far easier to get my run done when I could focus on my run, versus trying to, like, time my run around their nap schedule. And again, just part of the complexity of twins juggling two babies, we had to be very schedule oriented. So, like, nap time is nap time, and, there's no, oh, if they sleep, they sleep. If they don't, they don't. Like, no, no. Nap time is nap time. So we were very schedule oriented, and I just found it easier for me to focus on the run, getting out for the run. And yeah, so I was not the stroller runner that I thought I was going to be, but that's okay. It's also funny looking back now on this past year, like how much pressure I felt to get back into running a lot and back to my regular routine and back to all the things. I didn't take very much time off in terms of like maternity leave from work. I started seeing clients fairly soon after the twins were born, because I have a beautiful work situation where I'm able to work from home part time as much as I want, flexible hours. I mean, there are lots of challenges with owning your own business, but there's also a lot of benefits, especially when you have little ones at home. So, you know, because of that, my schedule was just busier than, someone who maybe is taking a maternity leave and is off work for, say, 12 or 18 months, like is very common here in Canada where I live. So my schedule was a little bit busier. I didn't have, as much daytime free time like other new moms might. And it's funny because like I felt so behind 4 or 5 months postpartum. I felt like so behind on things, like where I should be at this point. Like it's already been 4 or 5 months. And it's just so crazy. You look back now at a year and I just have a totally different perspective. Like 4 or 5 months after having a baby is just literally the blink of an eye, like literally. But when you're in it, it feels like forever, right? It feels like 100 years at the time. But now looking back, it's like, no, that was such a short time. I really should have been a lot easier on myself. I shouldn't have been so hard on myself to be trying to, get back to my regular routine and all the regular things. But that's okay. I mean, life is full of lessons, right? And like the past year, it has just been so wonderful and so much fun to watch my boys grow up, for them to hit all of these incredible milestones, learn all of these things, like just the amount of change that you go through from like bringing home these two tiny little 4.5 pound preemie babies to the, almost toddlers that they've become now. Like it's incredible. And for me, if running takes a little bit of a back seat for the time being, just the amount of time and sort of the commitment to doing a lot of running, that's okay. Again, I know that when I look back on this time in 3 years, in 4 years, in 5 years, in 20 years, again, it's going to feel like it was just the blink of an eye. So that's sort of my life update and what's been going on around here, kind of the good and the bad and the ups and the downs and everything like that, some of the big lessons that I took away. So hopefully if you're listening to this and you are where I was or you're about to be where I was and maybe you're going to be having a baby soon or something like that, you're newly postpartum, then I hope that you can take some of these lessons to heart and don't be so hard on yourself. But that being said, for next year, I feel like I'm ready now to plan my next half marathon for 2025. I do definitely want to get back into marathon running at some point, and I know that time in my life will come, but I'm trying really hard to not pressure myself, not rush it, not put too many things on my plate, right? Trying to juggle a family now, a business, a household, like all of that stuff, to also tack on the hours and hours of running every week that would be required to get in shape for a marathon. That's just not something that I'm ready to commit to at this point. But I really love the half marathon distance. It's really my favorite distance. I don't even know how many half marathons I've run. I've honestly lost count. Um, and at this stage in my life, I can't commit to the training kind of required for the full, but I think a half sounds good. So if you have any really great race recommendations, if there's a half marathon that you've run that you loved, if there's a half marathon in your city that you think is great and, worth checking out, let me know because traveling for more races is also something that I would like to do in the future. I do not have a lot of experience with traveling and going different places to race and kind of seeing different cities and sites and that sort of thing. So that's something that I definitely would love to do a little bit more often going forward. So that's what's kind of on my agenda for next year. Obviously, from a business perspective, we're going to keep the podcast going. We've got season 3 in the works, bringing it to you next year. You'll also find me, still doing my thing over on Instagram at Steph the Runner's Dietitian, and of course, I'd love to connect with you there. I will still be offering my one-on-one coaching programs, nutrition, run coaching, combination of both, as well as my online program for runners, the Fuel Train Recover Club. So we have lots of options for whatever you're looking for, whatever your struggles, challenges are as a runner. I've got the resources, I've got the tools, I've got the advice and guidance that you need to be successful. So I want to thank you so much again for listening to this episode, to all the episodes, everything that we've put out here so far with the Fuel Run Recover podcast. It has been an absolute joy to bring you these episodes. I've had so much fun, recording episodes for you by myself, talking to so many amazing people, whether it's like our guest experts or, the clients that I get to interview. It's just been such an amazing experience. And I'm really, truly grateful for, having this ongoing opportunity to be able to bring you this show each and every week. So that is it for today's episode and our final episode of season 2 of the Fuel Run Recover podcast. Hang tight, catch up on those old episodes, anything that you missed along the way, ones that you need to listen to again. I'm sure there's some that you probably can go back to and give a re-listen, get a few more tips, remind yourself of some of those key pieces of advice that I've shared along the way. And we will see you right back here in January of 2025 for season 3. Bye for now.
The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.